All right, I think I got everything working now. Hopefully you can hear the sound. So let's go back to what we were doing. Sorry about that, guys. I don't know. I'm just having a day. So we have this question, number 72. Let's take a look. An option to purchase a contract is considered binding to which of the following parties? A, the seller, B, the buyer, C, both the buyer and the seller, or D, neither the buyer nor the seller. So if we're sitting here and we're talking about this, we know that we need to look at the main part of this question, which is going to, of course, be option. It's an option contract, which means the buyer has bought the right to say, okay, I'm going to decide if I want to buy this house or not, or whatever. It could be land, it could be commercial, it's whatever. Options work the same way. But in an option contract, the buyer is buying the right to buy or the right to not buy. The seller's taking it off the market, and the seller has to sell it to that buyer. So, what do we look at here? In that case, the seller must sell, but the buyer doesn't have to buy. The buyer doesn't have to buy. So, in this option contract, it's not going to be both the buyer and the seller, and neither the buyer and seller. It's binding to the seller. The seller must sell in an option contract, but the buyer doesn't have to buy. That's what you bought, the right to walk away. All right, let's go to the next one. Let's see. In a real estate transaction, a person who authorizes another to act on their behalf is called, is it A, an agent, B, a principal, C, a power of attorney, or D, a designated agent? What say you? All right, let's look at this here. Just a fancy way of saying a person who authorized another to act on their behalf. Well, we're talking about the person who hires an agent. So a person who authorizes another to act on their behalf, that's not going to be the agent. The agent doesn't do the hiring. The principal does. This is a perfect example of a question. If you read too fast, you will get it wrong. And I am not judging, because if anybody is here from my day class today, you know my brain was not firing on all cylinders. Not today. And that's okay. All right, let's do our next one. Hey, MacDeal, how are you? Number 74. What federal law addresses the cleanup and remediation of hazardous waste sites to protect human health and the environment? I told y'all in both classes, or if you've done this with me, there is one act when it comes to environmental stuff that you need to know. Is it the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, CERCLA, or Brownfield's Law? It's not the Clean Air Act. It's not the Clean Water Act. And it is not the brownfields law, although you should know what a brownfield is, that area that's being used for, that was for industrial or some type of building. They've cleared it out and now it's kind of yucky. So usually they're going to see if they can, hopefully, revamp it. But our answer is CERCLA. And that has to go with the Superfund amendments. This idea that if you find a space or you have this land that has got terrible, contamination with toxic stuff and just bad stuff, you are forced to clean it up, and everybody connected to it is going to have to pay for it. That's CERCLA. All right, 75. A tenant has signed a 1-year lease on a commercial property. If after 3 months the lease property becomes unusable for the purpose stated in the lease, the tenant may have the right to abandon the premises. This action is called what? Hey, Caroline. So we got this tenant, and they signed a 1-year lease, but the property becomes unusable. And now the tenant may have the right to abandon the premises. So I've rented a place and it's not livable. It's like I've got a lease, but for some reason, it's just I can't live there. Maybe there's no heat. Maybe there's, uh, I don't know, no front door. Who knows? I don't know why there'd be no front door, but that's a whole different train that I'm not going down right now. So is this action called condemnation, alienation, constructive eviction, or abandoned leased property? Well, we know it's not condemnation. Why? Because condemnation is the actions behind eminent domain. Alienation just means to transfer, to give property to somebody else. And that's not what's happening here. So now we've got a 50-50 chance of getting this right. Is it constructive eviction or is it going to be abandoned leased property? Let's see. Hey. Oh, hey, Alexis. I see you there. I see the chat. And hey, Sydney. I see y'all with the right answer. Sorry, I didn't have it. I did not have your chat up. And now I see the two of you. Hey. All right. So, is it abandoned lease property? No. Our answer is constructive eviction. Now, if we're talking about constructive eviction, I know for my North Carolina people in class with me right now, we haven't talked about this yet. Although we have talked about constructive notice. And we know the opposite to constructive notice is actual notice. Actual notice is you literally tell somebody, hey, you know what? You can't, yeah, this is what you need to know. This is my house. That is actual notice. Constructive notice is when you do something that basically we're all going to assume it's like doing the real thing. So when you tell somebody on Facebook, you tell the world, I'm married, I'm in a relationship, you didn't actually tell them, you gave constructive information, like you constructively notified them of something. Well, it's that constructive word here. Actual eviction is when somebody puts a get out sign on your door. That's actual eviction. Constructive eviction is when you weren't told to get out, but the situation becomes such that you can't stay. So let's say, I know it's cold everywhere, just about everywhere. Let's say your heat goes out, and for the next 2 months, your landlord doesn't fix it. It would be impossible for you to stay there. Impossible. So what's going to happen? You could leave. The landlord made it impossible for you to stay. So now you can leave and not be responsible for the rent. That is constructive eviction. Because the property was unusable, you now have the right to abandon the premises. Now you can leave and no longer have to pay rent. That is going to be a good term for you to know. I want to make sure you know it. All right. Oh, yes, Magdiel, you can talk if you have questions. If you come on camera, people will see you. But yes, of course you can talk if you have questions. So do you have a question, sir? No. No, you just wanted to know if you could ask a question. All right, I'll take it. And of course, if you're watching via YouTube, you all can ask questions there. I have both chats up now. I'm pulling it together. I am. Today has been, I'm like, did I take my meds last night? Because my brain is all over the place. I blame this disrespectful cold. And by cold outside, not that I'm sick. All right, number 76. You said what, Magdiel?
I didn't want to mess it up, so I figured I'd ask first.
You can always ask a question. Questions are good. That's how we learn. All right, okay, 76. What is the purpose of a quiet title suit in real estate? What is the purpose of a quiet title suit? And if you were in my class, you would have heard me call it a suit to quiet title. Same thing, just putting the words in a different order. What is the purpose of a quiet title suit in real estate? Is it to A, evict a tenant who was overstayed their lease, B, to establish clear title when ownership is in question, C, remove an encroachment from a neighboring property, or D, to transfer ownership of a property without a formal deed? Hmm. Well, anybody got a clue? I'll eliminate one. It is not A, to evict a tenant who has overstayed their lease. Not that we've gone over for everybody the non-freehold estates, the leasehold estates, but this would be a tenancy in sufferance or at sufferance. You can think about this as, hey, if you're a landlord and your tenant was supposed to get out and they don't, you have to suffer through them being there. All right. So, McDeal, I see you say the answer is D, and it is not D. Transfer ownership to the property without a formal deed. Well, and it sounds good, but what do we know? We know that there's something called the Statute of Frauds, which says if it's a transfer of real estate, it has to be in writing. And then we learned about our essential and our non-essential elements of a deed. I mean, there's no such thing as a formal or an informal deed. It's either a deed or it's not. So, kind of by that logic, an informal deed would be like me just giving you a piece of paper with your name, my name, and an address on it. That's not going to transfer ownership, but a good guess. Right? So now we're down to B or C, to remove an encroachment from a neighboring property or to establish clear title when the ownership is in question. It is not to remove an encroachment from a neighboring property. I mean, if it's your property that is encroaching, yeah, that's not a quiet title suit or suit to quiet title. It would be a lawsuit where you're going to say, okay, judge, we've got this question about who owns the property. Maybe we've got two people that both have a deed and neither of them had as of yet recorded it. And now you've got a question. Who does it actually belong to? Or maybe somebody pops up and they're like, oh, you thought this was yours, but it's actually mine. And now you need a judge to figure it out. That would be a suit to quiet title. Right? So we like that one. That was a good vocab word. 77. When a person dies without a will, oh, we know that, intestate, and has no legal heirs can be identified, what happens to their property under state law? Is it A, the property reverts to the state, otherwise known as cheat? Oh, okay, MacDeal, you said it's A. MacDeal said it's A. He was real quick with it. Is it B, the estate is distributed to heirs according to the intestacy? Yeah, I don't know how to say that word. Laws. It's one of those weird ones. C, the estate is distributed according to the terms of a will, testate, or the property is held in probate indefinitely. Well, we got one, it's A, right? We got one person saying it's A. I like that answer, right? Caroline says it's A too. Well, let's eliminate our other ones. The fact that the estate is distributed to heirs according to the intestacy, whatever. The laws when you die intestate. Well, it says he died intestate and there are no legal heirs. So how are you going to distribute something to that doesn't exist? Like that's not a thing because the question said no legal heirs. How about C? The estate is distributed according to the terms of the will. He died intestate. He or she, which means there is no will. So it can't be that it goes according to the will. We don't read minds. And the property is not going to be held in probate indefinitely because it's just going to sit there. It's going to get all dirty and dusty. Maybe, I don't know, it becomes a place where people do drugs, or maybe it becomes haunted. I don't know. Maybe it becomes haunted with a poltergeist. Okay, obviously, I need to focus here, but the answer is A. The property reverts to the state. Remember, we got a sheet here. Right? What'd you say, MacDeal?
I said, so what happens when the property goes back to the state? What do the state do with that property?
Sometimes, there's sites where you can buy property that is what am I trying to say? That is property of the state, something that's been seized or anything like that. Sometimes they sell it. I know in Chapel Hill there was a property they got. Did they get that through a street? But like they turned this one property that was a larger property with a house into a park. So, I mean, they can do whatever they want with it, really. It's their property.
Wow, very interesting.
Hmm. I mean, it's the government. As we're finding out, the government pretty much does what it wants, regardless of what we want. So there's that.
Exactly.
Thank you, Caroline. And remember, SG is part of Pete. Police power, eminent domain, taxation, and then, of course, SG. All right. 78. Which government entity enforces the Fair Housing Act? Which government entity enforces the Fair Housing Act? And I just want to make sure, I'm Alexis, I'm assuming that's you, Botanical Gardens. Oh, yep, you said it is. I want to make sure you were good with that last question. But which government entity enforces the Fair Housing Act? Is it A, the Attorney General's Office, B, HUD, C, FHA, or D, OSHA? Well, we know it's not OSHA. That's who you call when your workplace is unsafe, right? Now, McDeal, you said it's B, HUD. We know it's not the Attorney General's office. So are you sure it's HUD and not FHA? Hey, Trixie, I see you there. So you're right.
Well, on my
Oh, wait, you said what,
on
McGill?
on my understanding, FHA that for the loans, right? Even though it's a government, but it's a loan government.
Yes, we love that. So FHA really deals with loans. In an FHA loan, the borrower still goes to the bank to get the loan. It's just in the FHA is saying, what am I saying? They're basically saying we are going to provide the mortgage insurance, right? Does that kind of make sense? Mortgage insurance.
Yeah.
But HUD, they are the entity on a national level that's going to enforce the Fair Housing Act. Now, most states are going to have their own little state thing. So like in North Carolina, it's the North Carolina Human Relations Commission. But if somebody really has a complaint because you're breaking fair housing laws, you could take it to HUD. You could take it to your licensing, like the commission or DRE, or depending on the state you're in. You can take them to court yourself civilly. But the answer is HUD. If you were to tell FHA, hey, I mean, federal housing, they'd be like, yes, this is bad, and we're going to switch you over to HUD. So it's not that it's, FHA is not going to care. They're just going to send you over to HUD. HUD is the one that's got responsibility. And yes, Caroline, FHA gives loan insurance. And we know if it was a VA loan, they'd be guaranteeing the loan. So good job. All right, 79. Which of the following involves illegally pressuring homeowners to sell by falsely claiming that changes in the neighborhood's demographics will lower property values? Oh, this is a good one. This is one of those words that I know you're going to have to know. This gets a big fat star because you'd better know this one. Which of the following involves illegally pressuring homeowners to sell by falsely claiming that changes in the neighborhood's demographics will lower property values? So, is it A, blockbusting, B, redlining, C, steering, or D, assumption? Well, I'm going to eliminate one. It's not D, assumption. Now, McDeal, you said A, blockbusting, and then Caroline, you said blockbusting. Well, if it's not A, I mean, if it is A and it's not B, redlining, what is redlining? What is steering? Because each of these are words you had better know for the test. Each of these are words you'd better know for this test. So, steering. It's not the right answer, but steering has to do with buyers. When the agent says, hey, you know what? I'm not even going to say says, they make the decision to show properties based off of some protected criteria. Now, for example, I'm just going to use whether somebody likes Duke or UNC Chapel Hill. I'm not quite sure why anybody would like Duke, but okay. As my mama says, some people's taste is all in their mouth. Blech. Nobody likes Duke. But if it was steering and we're talking about Duke versus UNC, this would be me going, okay, buyer, you want a house and you're a Duke fan? I'm only going to show you houses where there are other Duke fans. That's where you belong. I don't care if you want to live over there. That's the UNC fan side, and absolutely not. That's for Tar Heels only. I'm only going to show you where the Duke people are. That would be steering. Steering is about telling a buyer or a renter, hey, you kind of need to be over here. Or not even telling them that you're making that decision. You just kind of only show them properties over there. So that's not our answer, but it is an answer that I guarantee you need to know for the test. It's not redlining. Redlining has to do with loans. Redlining has to do with loans. This is where banks say, hey, you know what? Duke people, Dukies as we call them, they live over in that neighborhood. That's where the Duke fans live. And you know, those are some terrible people. So we just won't offer loans over there. Replace Dukies or Duke fans with any of the protected classes, and you'll see, okay, well, that is illegal. They can't say, oh, this area over here is this religion. We're not going to make loans over there. This area over here belongs to this ethnic group. We're not going to make loans over there. Banks truly did this for a long time. In fact, a lot of people don't know it was started by FHA. FHA, well, what was the equivalent of FHA back in the day? It started with the government saying, oh, this is a green area. It's okay for you to make loans. This is a yellow area. Might be a little scary to make a loan there, but you can. And here's a red area. We don't make loans. We're not, no loans in that area. So the government started it, but banks have continued it even with laws. So our answer is most definitely blockbusting. This would be me going in as a seller's agent or somebody wanting to be a seller's agent to a nice neighborhood and being like, hey, knock, knock, knock. I'm not sure if you heard, but Duke people who like Duke, those Dukies, you know, people with no general taste, they're coming, they're moving in, and you know they're going to bring down the housing value. You need to get out. You need to move. Oh, and by the way, I'm a realtor. I'd be glad to help you with any real estate needs you might have. That would be blockbusting. Again, I highly suggest that you know all of these words: the blockbusting, the redlining, the steering. I guarantee you're going to be tested on this. And just to make things even, blockbusting is about sellers. If I could spell sellers, There you go. Very important question, very important vocab. All right, 80. In caveat emptor states, who is primarily responsible for conducting due diligence and inspecting the property? In caveat emptor states, who is primarily responsible for conducting due diligence and inspecting the property? Is it A, the seller, B, the buyer, C, real estate agents, or D, home inspectors, I should say? Who's primarily responsible for conducting due diligence and inspecting the property? Tricks, I see what you said, that it was panic selling. Yep, panic peddling is another name for that. I'll write that down. Blockbusting can also be called panic peddling. It's a good synonym there. So I'm just going to go ahead and answer this one just to make sure we are all on the same page, but it's going to be the buyer. The buyer is the one that is responsible. We know that caveat emptor means let the buyer beware. That is a translation of, hey, you're the one buying it. It's your job to, take a look and make sure that this is the property you want. So North Carolina is a caveat emptor state. And you've heard me say so many times, In North Carolina, the seller doesn't have to tell you anything. It could be haunted. It could be full of rattlesnakes. It could be full of bed bugs. And the seller could just look at you and be like, They can't lie to you, but they don't have to tell you anything. It's a caveat emptor state. It's up to the buyer to figure out, hey, do I want the house or do I not want the house? So our answer is B, the buyer, because a bee's in the track. Bees in the track. A bee's in the track.
And Candace,
In the track. Yes, I was having a
Candace,
song moment.
also in North Carolina, the seller don't have to fix the house, right?
Yes, in North Carolina, the seller is basically useless. This is the seller. They just don't have to say anything. They can't lie. But a seller, when you buy a house in North Carolina, it's like buying a used car off of Craigslist. The seller of that car doesn't have to fix anything before they sell it to you. And they don't have to tell you what's wrong with the car. The only thing they can't do is lie about it. Like they can't go back and roll back the odometer or anything. They can't lie, but they don't have to tell you anything. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. That's what the due diligence come on place, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
Now, just to point that out, like Trix, at first you said seller, but I also know, Trix, you're not in North Carolina. So that you just want to be careful with that, right? I think a question like this, they're just wanting you to understand that it's caveat emptor in some states, but not all states are true caveat emptor, like, for example, North Carolina. So just make sure you get that. All right, good. We're learning some stuff, y'all. David is a real estate agent representing Amir, who is selling his home. Edward contacts David to ask about the property and schedules a showing. David provides Edward with accurate information, but does not negotiate or advise him. In this situation, Amir is David's what? Oh, that's a lot of people. Let's look at this again. So David is a real estate agent. So we got agent equals David representing Amir, and the agent's client is Amir. Okay, who is selling their home. Edward contacts David to ask about the contract of the property, but in schedules a showing. So now you got Edward, put him in a different color. He's a potential buyer. David provides Edward with accurate information, but does not negotiate or advise him. So the key here is right here. If somebody wants your help as the agent, negotiating, advice, skill, loyalty, obedience, all those things, then that person needs to be your client. You can only give that advice to your client. So in this case, the question is asking us, in this situation, Amir is David's what? Well, Amir hired David. David is the agent. That's not an option, right? David is the agent. That's not what we're talking about. We want to know about Amir. So Amir, what is Amir's relationship with David? He's not a customer, right? Is he a client or is he the principal? And in this case, our answer is both B and C. He is both the principal and the client. You can use those words interchangeably. He's the principal, he's the client, doesn't matter. And on your exams, whether it's the one for your end of class or state exam, don't be afraid to draw things out. If it helps you to be like, oh, this is Amir, yay. And then this person is David's got spiky hair. Sure, why not? And a funky eye. Okay, well, I should just not draw anymore. He's got a black eye and spiky hair. You could be like, that's Amir. I don't know. I need to stop. Really, I didn't take my meds. I'm just crazy. All right. So remember, your customer is the person you work with, and your client is the person you work for. The clients who you owe all of those fiduciary duties to. 82. after I got some water. Do. McDeal, are you laughing at my silliness? That's okay. You knew that. Trix is used to it. You're all used to it. You know what crazy around here. If a broker produces a ready, willing, and able buyer for a property, but the day before the closing, the seller changes their mind, the broker's commission is what? So basically, you're the you're the broker, and I'm assuming you're seller's agent. Then the seller says, you know what? I'm not selling this house. I have too many dreams, too many memories attached to this house. I'm not doing it. I can't part with it. Well, what does that mean for the broker? Does it mean that the commission is forfeited? Does it mean the commission is due from the buyer? Is it due from the seller? Or it must be renegotiated with all parties? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, this is a crappily written question. This is a crappy written question because it didn't tell me for sure if the broker is a buyer's agent or a seller's agent. Now, I'm assuming because of this ready, willing, and able buyer, I'm assuming they're saying this is the seller's agent. I'm assuming that they signed a listing agreement. So let's talk about why it's important and why I don't like the question. When you sign a listing agreement, you're saying, look, you promise to pay me money if I find a ready, willing, and able buyer, a RWAB. It's a new thing, the RWAB. If you find a ready, willing, and able buyer, you've earned your commission. Now, you probably aren't going to get paid until it closes, but you deserve that commission. You said, hey, you're hiring me to find a ready, willing, and able buyer. So if you back out, seller, you still owe me a commission. I did my job. I said I find you a ready, willing, and able buyer. I did. The fact that you've changed your mind is not my problem. I want my money. So in that case, yes, it would still be due from the seller. However, if it was a buyer's agent, I would tell you to look at the contract. Because most contracts are going to say, hey, buyer, I will have earned my a commission when you buy the house or when I find you a house. It's really going to depend. Like there are times when in the contract it says, I found you a house, I did all this work for you, and now you're going to pay me regardless of whether or not I buy the house, like a retainer, or you buy a house, like a retainer fee. But traditionally, buyer's agency contracts say, hey, if the sale doesn't go through no fault of your own, don't worry about it. You don't have to pay me. I only get paid if you buy a house if it's the fault of the seller. So this is really the type of question that needs some more detail. I get why they're saying the answer is C, is due from the seller. But there are some cases, like if you're a buyer's agent working with a FSBO seller, right? The buyer might actually owe you some money, even though the seller changed their mind. So I would want more detail on that. All right, 83. Homeowner Megan wants to sell her home. She makes an agreement with brokers, Elena, Paula, and Frank. Whichever broker finds the buyer will get the commission. What type of agreement is this? Right? Pay the coins. I see you Trix like now. Yeah. Y'all, we just talked about this in my earlier class. I am not free. I is not free. All right. Caroline said, you have to find a buyer. Open listing and ding, 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 ding. Caroline is great. She is on it. She knows the answer. It is an open listing. Now, let's make this clear for everybody. When we're talking about agency, let's choose this. There's a relationship between the client and the broker My North Carolina people like the BIC or the firm. There's a relationship between the firm and the client. That is agency. And then there's also, we can talk about agency for, how was I going to say it? Just types of seller agency, like types of listing agreements. We talk about agency. Sometimes I have to think about, okay, are we talking about the agency relationship between the client and the firm, that broker, the BIC, or are we talking about agency as far as specifically sellers? What are the options if you're a seller? Okay, there's exclusive agency, dual agency, those kind of things. That's not what I'm talking about. We're talking about the specifics of how sellers work. So let me see, where's the best place to show this to you? Maybe the cheat sheet. Let's take a look. Do 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 do. Okay, here we. Nope, that's not it. Ha! Here's what we want: types of listing agency agreements. Right? Types of listing agency agreements. For most of us, the one that you're going to have and it's going to be in the MLS is an exclusive right to sell. And an exclusive right to sell, that seller hires one broker, one BIC, one firm that is allowed to market the property. And that agreement says, hey, agent, when you find a ready, willing, and able buyer, you've earned your commission. It doesn't matter who finds the buyer. The buyers could fly down from outer space and want to buy the seller's house. I don't know. When that seller says, okay, I'll sell the house to somebody, at that point, you have found that seller a ready, willing, and able buyer, and you are due a commission. The key here being, it doesn't matter who finds the buyer, there's a commission due. Well, how is that different than exclusive agency? An exclusive agency, there's still only one broker, and you're still getting your commission when you get to find a ready, willing, and able buyer. But an exclusive agency, if the seller finds the buyer themselves, there's no commission for the agent. That is the major difference between the two. An exclusive right to sell, you're going to get a commission regardless of who finds the buyer. And an exclusive, if the seller finds the buyer, you don't get paid. So very important. Why would they make them sound so similar? I do not know. Exclusive and exclusive right to sell, really, that's the best you could come up with, brains? Okay, sure. So exclusive agency, if the seller finds the buyer, you don't get paid. But if exclusive right to sell, it doesn't matter who finds the buyer, you get paid. I like to say more words are more options for getting paid. Exclusive right to sell. That's 4, well, that would be 5 now, wouldn't it? That's 4 words. Exclusive agency is just 2. So more words, more abilities and chances to get paid. Less words, less chances and abilities to get paid, because again, we know that you get paid if the ready, willing, and able buyer is found. And again, which one? If do I get paid if anybody finds the buyer, or just if it's not you, seller? And then an open agency. Open agency is like polyamorous dating or marriage. Yes, I went there. This is when the seller says, any broker can market the property. Any of y'all can have open houses. Any of you all can do tours. You know, whatever it is, fine, cool, whatever. I'm not saying just one agent is going to represent me. Instead, I'm saying I will promise to pay the broker, and by this, again, I mean firm, I'm willing to pay the broker who finds the buyer. So if you've got 4 agents, maybe the agents are Angie and Matthew Maybe Barbara and Celine. Making up names here. If there's a seller, this seller writes contracts to all of these people. Any of these brokers could hire, could go and try to find a buyer, whatever. But if it's Barbara that finds the buyer, then Barbara gets paid. If Barbara found the buyer, Barbara gets paid. If Angie found the buyer, Angie would get paid. So this open agency, it's almost like a for sale by owner. Right? It's almost like a for sale by owner. There's no listing agent, only an agent who wanted to take, who basically did the work and found the buyer. That's the agent that's getting paid. I hope that makes sense. Yeah, we'll just go with it. So going back to our questions, la-di-da, our answer is open listing. 84. After more water. Why am I so thirsty? What is an agent's role when addressing environmental hazards in a real estate transaction? What is an agent's role when addressing environmental hazards in a real estate transaction? Is it A, direct their client to consult with an expert on any potential hazards? B, be able to identify potential hazards. C, ensure all required disclosures are made to potential buyers or tenants. Or D, all of the above. Oh, this is one of those questions. This is one of those questions where you could talk yourself back and forth on it. Like, okay, is that true or is it not true? So because it's asking us what the agent's role is, what we know is that there's going to be some true statements and some false statements. It's going to be true. We're looking for the true, which means there's going to be one true and there's going to be 3 false. So let's look. Do you have to direct your client to consult with an expert on any potential hazards? Yeah. We just talked about this not too long ago. If you look in your client's bathroom and there's this growth, this mold looking stuff, and it just happens to be a dark color, you can't look at it and be like, you know what? That doesn't smell like bad mold. You're good. You're fine. No, you tell them to hire a professional to check it out. Be able to identify potential hazards. Yes, that's your job. That's why people are hiring you. You have the knowledge they don't. Ensure all the required disclosures are made to potential buyers or tenants. Yep. It's a material fact, and I don't care what state you're in, you have to give those material facts. So that means actually all 3 of these are good answers. All of the above. 85. What does a promissory note represent in the real estate transaction? What does the promissory note represent in a real estate transaction? Is it A, assets, B, debt, C, hypothecation, or D, amortization? Ruh-roh, Rudy. That's a lot of big words. Assets, debt, hypothecation, amortization. Now, first of all, you know I have a great love for the word. That's a heart, you just can't tell. Okay, now that looks like a butterfly, so I might as well finish. There you go. Now you have a butterfly, and I'll just draw a heart here. I love the word hypothecation. Hypothecation is the idea that you can borrow, you can give something as collateral, right? But you don't give up possession. Think your car. If you have a car loan, you basically said to the bank, hey, would you let me drive this car around and I'll pay you back monthly. And if I don't pay you back, then you can come and take my car back. That's using the car as collateral. And the fact that you get to drive the car, even though the bank is using it as collateral, that is hypothecation. It's a word you should definitely know. Plus, it's just fun to say, like extraterritorial jurisdiction. So hypothecation, this idea that you can loan a property but not give up possession. Well, I hate to break it to you, as much as that's one of my favorite words, it's not the answer. What is hypothecation? Well, that would be either the mortgage, the actual mortgage document, or it would be a deed of trust. Either one is going to set the property up as collateral, and the bank has the right to sell it to get their money back. Well, amortization means to pay off slowly. Amortization is the idea, just like with your car, that you make a monthly payment the same amount every month. And when you get through all of the payments, you don't owe any more principal and no more interest. Now, Caroline, I see you said it's B debt. McDeal, I think you said it's B debt. And let's see, better deal than layaway. You know what? You're not wrong, Trex. You are not wrong. And yes, we are correct. The answer is, where's my yellow? Boop-a-doop-a-doo. The answer is debt. Remember, the promissory note is the I promise to pay. Right? It's an IOU. A promissory note is a really formal IOU. Somebody's trying to get you. Well, somebody gave you money and they're trying to have you pay it back with some interest. So that's that. And that doesn't look like OU, but that's what it is. In a promissory note, you're saying, hey, if you give me this money, I promise to pay you back. That's the promissory note. It references the debt. 86. What are the defining characteristics of a package mortgage and a chattel mortgage? What are the defining characteristics of a package mortgage and a chattel mortgage? Well, in a question like this, I would say, well, why don't you break these up? A promissory is a promise to pay the debt. Yeah, exactly, McDeal. So a package mortgage, whenever I think of package mortgages, I think of Christmas. And yes, I called it Xmas. Leave me alone. A package mortgage is when you are getting the real property plus you're getting some personal property. That's what you're saying. If it is a package mortgage, you're saying, hey, you know what? The best example of this is I want to buy a beach house. I'm going to get this beach condo and I don't have, $500,000 laying around, so I'll get a mortgage. But when I went to go see this seaside cottage, it turned out that it was just decorated so pretty. So I said, hey, can I pay you for the property as well as the decorations? That package is that you're getting the personal property along with the real property. So that's what a package mortgage is. Then your question becomes, well, Candace, what does it mean to be a chattel mortgage? Well, a chattel mortgage, we know chattel in general means, what's it called? Personal property. It's another word for personal property. So our answer here is going to be C. Why? Because a package mortgage includes both real and personal property. Oh, that's not where I wanted that one to go. And personal property. But the chattel mortgage, that is for personal property only. You're just getting a mortgage for personal property. You knew that. You didn't have to overcomplicate it. You might remember package, but when you see, or I should say up here, you might have seen package. If you're not quite sure about the chattel, you could at least narrow it down. Right? You could narrow it down. 87. Federal fair housing laws protect all of the following categories except. Federal fair housing laws protect all of the following categories except. Is it A, color, B, pregnant women, C, marital status, or D, familial status? Okay, why are you yelling at us about marriage, McDeal? Why? Why are you yelling at us about your marriage? Right? He put it in caps. Right? And yes, everybody is correct. If it's fair housing laws, oopsie. If it's fair housing laws, what's protected is marital status. Right? Now, we only have a little bit of time left, but as Alexis and what am I trying to say here? And Sydney were witness to today. Y'all, I tried to teach some math and I completely gaffled it. I mean, y'all, I couldn't add two numbers together if I tried. So, for my own benefit, I'm going to pick a magic. No, I'm just going to do a math problem, a random math problem, because my poor pride just, I know I'm not good at numbers, but it was embarrassing. It was, is it like a bill of sale? Oh, sorry, Trix, I just saw that. You said, is it like a bill of sale? No, it is an actual mortgage. So you're talking about the package mortgage. It would be, um, it, it would basically, well, no, I guess you're probably saying the chattel mortgage. It's a mortgage, so you're going to be paying it off slowly, if that makes sense. Right. So think of a mobile home. Whenever I think of chattel mortgages, I think of mobile homes because mobile homes are not real property, but you are paying them off slowly. All right. So y'all, I have a challenge ahead of me. I am going to attempt to do a math problem and get it right. And if I don't get it right, I will do another math problem until I do a math problem right the first time. I got this. Thank you, Sydney. Thank you for believing in me. Okay. All right. Now, just out of curiosity, and I know there's a little bit of a lag here, is there any type of math problem somebody wants me to do? I completely messed up on the net to seller. It wasn't the concept, it was the adding. I couldn't use my numbers correctly. I understood the concept, but is there any type of math problem you want me to do? Otherwise, I'll just kind of go calculate loan to value. I can do that, sir. I can do calculate loan to value. Let me find one. That's percentage of increase in equity. Let's see. Annual interest. Here we go. Nope, that's PITI. This is LTV. Okay. Let's see. McDeal, since you asked for it, should I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 3 or 4? 1 through 4. Which one, sir? 1 through 4. What you want? 1, 2, 3, or 4? Do 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 2. Do 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 do. No pressure, Candace. No pressure. We can do this. Let's psych myself up. Right? I can do this. I can do this. What are we gonna psych myself up with? Here we go.
The champ is here! The champ is here! The champ is here!
Okay. I'm a champion. I can do this. I can do this. We are the champions, my friends. Okay. Okay, maybe I can sing my way to it. Ryan, hey, Marilli. Ryan is under contract to purchase a home for $209,750. I'm going old school, y'all. I'm doing this the way as if, just simple. So I'm going to say purchase price. The price here is $209,750. The appraisal has come back at $202,750. So the appraisal value is $202,750. Sometimes, guys, when you have a lot of numbers in a problem, it helps just to go ahead and pull them out. I got this, Caroline. Thank you, because I surely did not have it earlier today. What is the maximum loan he can receive with an 80% loan to value ratio? So this loan to value ratio says, hey, if I compare whatever the loan amount is to whatever the value is. So when I compare this loan amount to the value of the property, what percentage is it? This is me basically saying, let's say when I was 16, if I had wanted a car from my dad, if I said, hey, Dad, will you buy me a car? This one right here is $5,000. If the car was $5,000 and I had not a single cent to my name, then my dad would have to loan me $5,000. And $5,000 is 100% of $5,000. But if my dad said he would loan me $2,500, then that means if the car was $5,000, he loaned me 50% of the value. We're comparing what is the loan amount to the value of the property. Now, the catch here is the appraisal came back at 202,750, and I was under contract to buy it for 209,750. I promise you, if an appraiser comes out and says, yeah, the house is worth 202,750, that is what the bank thinks it's worth. They are not about to loan you more money than they have to. So
So
in
Candace,
this case,
so we
yes.
always going to go by, we're always going to go by the appraisal, right?
No, you're going to go with the lower number. So
Okay.
we're going to go with the 202,750 this time because it's lower. That says lower, but you couldn't tell. There we go. However, let's say this problem said that, and I'll choose a different color. You were buying it for 209,750, but it appraised for 215. You asked the bank for 80% of the value. And banks are not in the habit of giving you more money than you asked for. So since the appraisal was 215, but you thought you were just going to need 80% of 209,750, in that case, you would use this lower number. But in the example we're doing here, the lower number is our 202,750. So whenever you're trying to figure out the value, always go with the lower number. Basically, the bank is saying, we'll give you 80% of 202,750, but anything between what we loan you and that 209, that better be part of your down payment. We're only going to help you finance what the house is worth. This is the equivalent if I asked you to ask you if I could borrow some money. And I was like, hey, MagDeal, I've got this computer here. It's worth $3,000. I'll give you the computer if you'll give me $10,000. Absolutely not. The computer's only worth, what? No. They're only going to give you a loan based off of the value, the lower number, because either you asked for less and so they're just going to give you less, or it's worth less and they're going to base it off that other value. So let's go back to the black here. All right. So what am I going to do? I'm going to say, hey, our value is 202,750, and we need to find 80% of that. So just looking at it, I know whatever number I come back, I get, it needs to be smaller than 202,750. So I'll put in my calculator, 202,750 times 80%. And that's going to be 162,200. This would be the loan amount. Assuming I mathed correctly, that would be the loan amount. So if you're buying the house for 209,750 and the bank gives you a loan for 162,200, let me make sure I did that right. 202,750 times 80%, because you know today's been one of those days. 162,200. Okay, I just want to double check. So if I take that 162,200, that's what the bank is giving you. The seller is expecting 209, which means our down payment would be for $47,550. That's our down payment. I think I did it right. Oh, Caroline came up with the same numbers. You came up with the same numbers. Y'all, I did it right. I did it. Should I do another one? You all decide. Should I do another one of a different type of problem or the same type of problem? And also, Sydney and Alexis, I did it. Yay me. I'm a champion. PITI. I can do a PITI. Somebody's been working in their math. I love it. Let's do a PITI. All right. Do you want me? Okay, I'm just going to do number one, Magdiel, because who knows? It says, what would be the PI payment? Oh, actually, that's not a PITI payment. Let's do a PITI. Here we go. 3. What would be Sean's PITI payment if he borrowed $140,000? The property taxes are $1,385, and the insurance costs him $576 a year if his loan factor is 8.05. Well, we got to break this down a bit. Loan factor is another way of saying a rate of principal and interest payment. Right? A rate of principal and interest payment. And with loan factors, what you're saying is 805 is actually $8.05. And you owe $8.05 in monthly payment for every $1,000 borrowed. So let's talk about this. Let's say you decide to buy a cardboard box for $1,000. Well, you would owe $8.05. So now your payment, because that's our rate, you're going to pay $8.05 every month until you pay off that $1,000. If you borrowed $2,000, well, we know there's 2 thousands. It would take $2,000 bills to get to 2,000. So that means I'm going to pay this 805 2 times. So that means I'm going to pay $1,610 a month until I pay off this loan. Right? Do one more. If it was a $10,000 loan, you're going to pay $8.05 for every $1,000 of the money borrowed. It would take 10 $1,000 bills to make 10,000. So if I take 805 and I multiply it by 10, I'm going to pay, oh, you know what? I'm not even about to try that. Use calculator. $8.05. Okay, I should have been able to do that in my head. $8.50. I was not thinking about that. This would be your monthly payment until you pay off the loan. This is your monthly PI payment. So let's go with that. Don't let you know that was for there. So if the loan factor is 805 and he's borrowing $140,000, if I take this $140,000 and I divide it by 1,000, that tells me there's 140 1,000s, right? You would have 140 $1,000 bills to make up 140,000. And my factor is 805 right here. So I'm going to pay $8.05 140 times every month until I've paid this back. So 8.05 times that's 140. That means every month from now until the 30 years later when I pay this loan, I'm going to owe $1,127. Just like when you have a car payment, every single month you pay the same amount. That's what this is. In fact, this math where you have a rate and then you're going to pay it for every 1,000 borrowed. If you have a car payment, your lender did the exact same thing. They did the exact same thing. It was just a different factor. And it was for, because there's less years and blah, blah, blah. So exact same math. So now we know this is the P and the I. That's the P and I. And this asked us for PI and TI. We got to come up with the T and the I. The T and the I stands for taxes and insurance. When it comes to taxes, I don't care what state you're in, the bank goes, you know what? I know you're going to owe real property taxes for the whole year. but we need to make sure you pay them, because if you don't pay them, you'll get foreclosed upon, and that's our collateral. No. We want to make sure that this all gets taken care of. So you know what you're going to do? You're going to take your annual tax amount, and instead of paying once a year, you're going to pay 12 times a year. And we'll take that money, we'll put it in a trust account, and when the balance is due, when the taxes are due, we'll pay it for you, because we don't trust you. We don't know you like that. And the same thing with insurance. What if there's a fire? What if, your child becomes friends with a yellow car that's actually a transformer, and the transformer ruins the house? That was our collateral. So we need to make sure there's always an insurance policy. So when Bumblebee ruins the house, we have either our money back or we can rebuild. So the same thing, you pay insurance usually annually. We're going to have you pay 12 times a year, monthly. And then we'll collect those monies, and we'll also pay your insurance bill, because we don't want to play any games with this. So what I'm going to do is take my tax amount and my insurance amount, and I'm going to add them together. Property taxes were $13.85, and insurance was $5.76. So if I take $13.85 plus $5.76, I get $19.61. It sounds like a year of a very good wine. 19, I'll get a bottle of the 1961 such and such and such. I don't drink, so it just sounds nice. So annually, between your taxes and your insurance, this was taxes and this was insurance, you would owe $19.61. That would be annual, so I'm going to divide that by 12. I'm going to take that $19.61 and divide it by 12. So that is $163.41 or 42. That is going to be how much you owe for your, sometimes you'll see them called reserves. Sometimes on the test, you'll see them called reserves, because they're putting them into reserve. They're putting them into a trust account so that they have the money to pay your bill to make sure it actually happens. So each month you need to pay, and I'll put this in a different color, you need to pay the $1,127, that's your PI, plus the $163.41, that's your TI. So let's see if I slide this over, your PITI would be, drum roll, 1127 plus 163.41 equals, I'm just going to put it here, 1290.41. Your monthly payment would be $1290.41. So when you make this payment, the bank's going to say, all right, we're going to put $163.41 towards taxes and insurance. That doesn't touch what you owe us at all, right? Oh, sorry, I should write that out. Pity is, somebody asked what's pity? Principal. That's what you borrowed. Interest, which is interest. Taxes and insurance. When you pay like a credit card bill, you have to pay what you borrowed, the principal, and then you pay some interest because you borrowed money. PITI stands for principal and interest, taxes, and insurance. Okay. So if you made this $1290.41 payment, $163.41 is going to go towards taxes. Well, that means you've got to do something. They've got to do something with that $1127 that you paid. Well, part of that lowers your principal, and part of that lowers is what you owe in interest. And just for, fun, Let's figure out how much that would be. If you borrowed 140. Ugh, we don't know an interest rate. I guess I could figure it out. Hold, please. The interest rate on this problem would be How do I do this? I might as well. Now I'm in for a penny. I might as well stay for the pound. So the formula for this is if you take the number of 1,000s borrowed and you multiply it by the factor, you're going to get the amount of PI payment. I take that back. I mean, that's true, but that's not what we need. That gives you your amount of PI. And we know that we borrowed, was it 140? And we know the factor was 8.05. But the question becomes, where did this $8.05 come from? Well, that comes from what we call an amortization chart, which is amortization chart. Depending on how long you're borrowing the money for, that's this row. Was it for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, 30 years? Let's assume it's 30 years. And depending on your interest rate, so we're going down the line here, you will find a factor. Like this is actually $5.12. This is actually $6.05. This would actually be, $6.90. So what's in this box is factors. Well, if we know that it was a 30-year loan, we're just going to assume, and our factor was 8.05. You can't do it. It's not big enough. It's not big enough. Because it's not here. My guess is you would, it's probably something like 9%, something like that. It's probably something like 9% because, you know what? Let's just pretend. Here's $8.05. Let's pretend this was a 20-year mortgage. If you did a 20-year mortgage and we said, hey, your monthly payment is 8.05, that means your interest rate was 7.5%. I know that seems crazy, but okay. Right? This is how they figure out how much your monthly payment's going to be. If you, for some reason, were like, can I have 10 years to pay off this car? They would say, yeah. At 10 years, if we give you a 5% interest rate, you're going to pay us $10.60 for every 1,000 you borrow. That's how they do it. This thing in there is a factor. Now, this was just a chart. It doesn't happen to go to 30 and get to the 8.05, but we could say if it's 8.05, it's for 20 years. So let's pretend it's 7.5% interest. What we're going to do is say, look, we borrowed $140,000. We borrowed $140,000, and if I borrow that for 1 year, at 7.5%, and I paid everything back at once, I didn't make any monthly payments, I just borrowed this money for 1 year, at 7.5% interest, it would be 140 times 7.5%. I would owe the bank $10,500. That's for a year of interest. If I borrowed the $140,000 for 1 year, and I made one lump sum payment at the end of that year for all the principal and all the interest, I would write them a check for the 140 plus the 10.5, so that'd be 150,500. 150,500. But that's for a year. And normally when you make mortgage payments, they're for a month. And we know there's 12 months in a year. So if I take that 10.5 and I divide by 12, that's how much interest I would owe for 1 month. So I'm going to take that 10.5 divided by 12, and that gives me $875. $875 a month if I want to borrow $140,000 at 7.5%. For doing it for 1 year would be $10,500. To do it for 1 month is $875. So when we did this math all the way up here, and we figured out our monthly payment was $1127 for the P&I, you paid $1127. That is P&I. And for that first month, because remember, that's your P&I payment for the month. If the first payment, the interest monthly, the interest you owe for borrowing it for a month is $875, then that means even though you wrote a check in which $1127 was going towards principal and interest, only $252 would go towards principal. If you owe them $140,000 after you make that payment, if you only made one payment to pay off the loan, you would owe $139,748. You might have written a check for over $1,000, but it only lowered your principal that you owe them by $252. That $875 is what you owe the bank for being a bank. Ah, McDeal, you were like, wow, it's a ripoff, man. It's a ripoff. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So there you go. I love teaching the finance math. When I can use my numbers correctly, it's so powerful to show people how much you're actually paying in interest. It should be illegal. Or I should be born into a banking family, one of the two. If somebody's going to get that rich, it should be me. But alas, I was not. So if somebody knows somebody rich, I will marry them. Or, whichever. I did 2 math problems correctly. Go me. It's my birthday. Go me. It's not my birthday, but still, I'm happy about it. I am happy about it. You know what? I've earned myself a...
My money don't jiggle, jiggle, it folds. I like to see you wiggle, wiggle, for sure.
Again, guys, when I sit down to do my Michigan exam, I will be going real slow with this math because you've seen I can mess it up. But if I can do it, that means you can do it. Because Lord knows I'm not the brightest on the block. I'm not the brightest bulb in the lamp over here. All right? So, thank you, McDeal. They are smart. Bulbs are smart. I mean, there are smart bulbs out there and they're expensive. It does sound like me. So guys, you know that I'll be back here on Wednesday. We'll do more questions. I love the fact that we did some math and we can do math that day too. And then I'll be back on Friday. And then this will be my last Friday. And then we'll just go every Wednesday and Sunday. That's what we'll do. It'll be Wednesday nights at 7, Sunday nights at 5. And I think that's it. You thought it was 3 p.m. So I don't know why. Sorry. It was 5 p.m. Eastern. So that would be 3 p.m. if you're in like Mountain Time. So there you go. So Sundays, I'll just write it out one more time. Sundays at 5 p.m. Eastern. Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. And we got one more Friday at 3 p.m. There we go. There you go. 2 p.m. There you go. Yep, exactly. Oh, on Sundays it would be 2 p.m. Pacific on Sundays. Yes, I can math. No, I can't. That's a lie. I can't math. Not even gonna try. All right, guys, this was fun, and I'm so proud of myself in my day class. I told you I could math. I told you I wasn't as bad as I thought.
Quick question, Candace.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I was looking into your calendar to schedule a private touring,
Mhm.
and I noticed that I think you don't do touring on Fridays or
you, ma'am?
Saturdays, right?
Go ahead and email me. I'll work something out.
Okay.
Because in general, if it's just a random person, a rando, I mean, I don't know how serious you are, but I know that you're serious. So we can find a time within my schedule. I do teach on Saturdays, and I do sometimes have classes on Friday, but let me know, like, what you want it this week, next week, what you're looking for, and I will find a way to work you in.
Yeah,
No
I was
worries.
thinking close to, because I'm thinking to schedule the test, but I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm so
Yeah, no problem.
nervous.
Just email me. We'll find a good time.
Okay.
We will
See you,
find a
Caroline.
good time. Have a great evening. Stay warm,
Thank you.
everybody, and I'll see you next time.
Thank
All right,
you.
always. Thank you.
You're welcome. Stay out of